At my sister's baby shower, everyone laughed as she unwrapped my mom's necklace, the one she pawned after lying it was lost, and my dad bought it back just for her. But they went silent fast when I came back to town with my new name and title. "Judge, it happened right there, under the cheap pink, 'It's a girl' banner my dad had hung crookedly across the living room. My sister, Alyssa, sat in the center of the room surrounded by pastel balloons and fake smiles. Everyone was sipping punch and pretending this family wasn't a ticking time bomb. I was doing my best to play along. I'd flown in just for this baby shower, mostly to prove to myself I could handle being around them again. I even brought a gift, a small diaper bag filled with essentials and a handwritten card. It wasn't fancy, but it was from the heart. Then came the special gift, the one everyone was apparently waiting for. My dad handed Alyssa a little velvet box, and the room went quiet. When she opened it, people actually clapped. It was my necklace. The tiny gold locket with the chipped heart charm my mom gave me on my 10th birthday, the same one that vanished the week she died. I recognized the small dent near the clasp, the faint engraving on the back that read, "Forever, L." I used to wear it every day until the day it went missing. My stomach dropped. I asked, "Wait, where did you get that?" My dad looked uncomfortable for half a second, but Alyssa just smirked. "Dad found it," she said sweetly. "He thought it would be nice for me to have something of Mom's for my daughter." The room buzzed with approval. Everyone smiled. Everyone except me. "That's not Mom's necklace," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's mine." That's when my Aunt Carol, the family's self-appointed moral compass, chimed in. "Oh please," she scoffed, waving her drink. "You lost that years ago. Be happy it's finally with someone who'll appreciate it." I looked at my dad. "You bought that back, didn't you, from a pawn shop?" He wouldn't look at me. I pressed harder. "Alyssa pawned it, didn't she?" The silence said everything. Finally, my aunt snapped, "Because you never deserved anything special. You've always been ungrateful. Let your sister have something for once." People laughed. My own family giggled as if I was some hysterical joke. I stood up, shaking, and said, "That necklace was my mother's last gift to me." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough, Erin, you're ruining her day. You always make everything about yourself. Maybe you should just go." So I did. I walked out while they stared, clutching their paper cups and fake sympathy. No one called me. Not that night, not that week, not for months. I stopped trying after the 5th voicemail. But life has a funny way of shifting balance. Because 2 years later, I came back to that same town with a new name, Dr. Aaron L. Matthews, and a new title carved into the polished sign outside the courthouse. And this time, I wasn't here to cry. I was here to settle everything. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, the kind where everyone knows your business before you do. My parents owned a little hardware store on Main Street. From the outside, we looked normal, middle class, church on Sundays, matching Christmas sweaters. But inside that house, it was always me against them. Alyssa was the golden child. The perfect grades, the perfect smile, the one who could do no wrong. She got new clothes, new phones, even a car for her 17th birthday. I got hand-me-downs and lectures about gratitude. Every time I tried to speak up, I was told I was jealous or dramatic. The only person who ever made me feel seen was my mom. She was gentle, kind, and the only one who defended me when the others ganged up. When I was 10, she gave me that necklace, a tiny gold locket she said belonged to her grandmother. She told me, "As long as you wear it, you'll never feel alone." 2 weeks after my 18th birthday, she died. Sudden stroke. I remember sitting in her hospital room, numb, while my dad and Alyssa argued in the hallway about the funeral costs. I just sat there, holding the locket. The day after the funeral, it disappeared. I tore my room apart looking for it, sobbing until my throat hurt. My dad told me to stop being materialistic. Alyssa swore she hadn't touched it. I didn't believe her, but I had no proof. After that, I stopped trusting anyone in that house. I went to college on scholarships, working nights to cover what my family wouldn't help with. Alyssa stayed home, got engaged to her high school boyfriend, and posted about her amazing family support every week. By senior year, I was barely scraping by, but I graduated with honors and got into law school. That was the first time I felt like maybe I could build something on my own, a life not defined by what they took from me. Still, every holiday, every phone call, every family event was the same. Snide remarks about how I think I'm better now, jokes about how the lawyer forgot her roots. I kept going back because some small, stupid part of me wanted to be accepted. And when Mom's memory came up, they acted like she'd been theirs alone. Alyssa even used her middle name for her first child. So when I walked into that baby shower 2 years ago and saw the necklace in my sister's hands, it wasn't just about the gold or the memory. It was about every single time they'd taken something from me and then laughed when I noticed. When no one returned my calls after that day, I finally got the message. I was the family scapegoat, and they preferred it that way. But I didn't stay gone out of shame. I stayed gone because I was working. I built my career, case by case, until I became one of the youngest assistant district attorneys in the county. And when I came back to that town, it wasn't just to visit. It was because my name was on a file that had their names in it, my father's, Alyssa's, and Aunt Carol's. And what that file contained was worse than anything I'd ever imagined. It started as routine work. I was only 3 months into my position at the DA's office when my supervisor asked me to review a batch of pending cases: local fraud, small business audits, property disputes. Just paperwork. I wasn't even supposed to be on anything major yet. But one file caught my attention because of a familiar name: L&M Hardware Supply, my father's store. At first, I thought it was coincidence. But as I skimmed the report, my chest tightened. It was an investigation into financial irregularities, unpaid taxes, falsified loan documents, and a series of pawn shop receipts tied to missing business inventory. The receipts were signed by Alyssa Whittaker, my sister. My hands went cold. I read the line 3 times before it really sank in. There were also several pawned items listed by description: power tools, chainsaws, some antique fixtures, and one entry that made me stop breathing. Gold heart locket, inscription, forever, L, estimated value, $425. My locket, my mother's locket. It was dated 1 week after Mom's funeral. I remember just sitting there in my office, the hum of the fluorescent lights above me, trying to stay composed. Every suppressed memory from that house came rushing back: the arguments, the laughter at my expense, the way they dismissed me like I didn't belong. And now here it was, proof that Alyssa had stolen it, that she'd pawned it right after our mother died. But that wasn't the worst part. The financial documents showed something bigger. My dad had taken out multiple small business loans using Mom's death benefit as collateral. When the money dried up, he started moving funds between accounts under Alyssa's name to hide tax debt. Aunt Carol was listed as a silent partner. I had to stop reading for a moment. It felt like the ground shifted beneath me. These weren't just family secrets, they were federal crimes. When I showed the file to my supervisor, he frowned and said, "You sure you're okay handling this one?" "Conflict of interest," I lied. Said I was fine. I told him I could be objective, but inside I was burning. I started digging deeper: court records, pawn slips, transaction histories. I pieced together years of lies. They'd been laundering money through small-town pawn shops, covering debts, using Mom's insurance payout to stay afloat. The same payout they'd told me was too small to split. And that necklace, it wasn't just a keepsake. It was the first piece they ever pawned. The beginning of all their schemes. That night, I sat alone in my apartment staring at my reflection, realizing something bitter. All those years they mocked me for being the ungrateful one. I was the only one who hadn't been taking from anyone. They didn't just steal my inheritance. They stole my mother's last connection to me and turned it into the first link in a chain of fraud. I knew I couldn't just report them anonymously, not yet. Because suddenly, for the first time, I didn't just want justice. I wanted revenge. The deeper I dug, the more rot I found. What started as financial fraud spiraled into something uglier, something personal. At first, I thought my dad and Alyssa were just desperate. The store had been failing for years. Maybe they made bad choices trying to keep it afloat. But the more I read, the less it looked like desperation, and the more it looked like intent. They'd been quietly cashing in on my mother's name. There were donation drives listed under the Linda Matthews Memorial Fund, supposedly raising money for women's health charities. My dad and Aunt Carol ran them every spring, posting pictures on Facebook of smiling volunteers and charity banners. But when I checked the accounts, every cent of the donations went straight into the hardware store's business account. Tens of thousands of dollars, stolen under my mom's name. I wanted to throw up. But it got worse. I found something in the files that shouldn't have been there, a scanned copy of a will. My mother's original will. I knew the one we'd filed after her death had left everything to my dad. That's what I'd been told, at least. But this one was different. In this version, the real one, dated 6 months before she died, my mom had split everything 50-50 between Alyssa and me. The business, the insurance, her jewelry, all of it. My name was right there in black ink, signed and notarized, and on the last page in the witness section was Aunt Carol's signature. The same Aunt Carol who screamed at me that I never deserved anything special. It hit me all at once. They'd covered it up. My dad had filed a forged version of the will after Mom's death. Alyssa and Carol had helped. They'd erased me from my own inheritance. I printed out every document, every receipt, every pawn slip. I filled an entire binder. Each page was another piece of proof that my family had lied, stolen, and rewritten history to cut me out, not just financially, but emotionally. It was never about money alone. It was control. Keeping me small, keeping me silent. That night, I called my dad from a blocked number just to hear his voice. He picked up, gruff as ever. "Hello." I didn't say anything at first. Then quietly I said, "You ever think about Mom's will?" A long pause, then a low, nervous chuckle. "Who is this?" I hung up before he could finish. I spent the rest of the night staring at that binder, realizing I had two choices. Hand it all over and watch them go down through the system, or play it slow and make sure they felt it first. That's when I noticed something else, something small but strange in the evidence folder. A recent transaction. Just 1 week old. A pawn shop slip for a diamond bracelet under the name L. Matthews. But my mother had been gone for more than a decade. That meant someone was still using her name. And the signature didn't look like my dad's. Or Alyssa's, it looked like mine. The moment I saw that signature, my whole body went cold. Someone had forged my name, Aaron L. Matthews, on a pawn slip for a diamond bracelet. The same name I now used professionally, the one printed on my DA badge. That wasn't just petty theft anymore. That was identity fraud, and I knew exactly who was bold or stupid enough to pull that off. Alyssa. She'd been using my name on and off for years, to open credit lines or fake references. I'd caught hints of it before, old bills that somehow got sent to my address, a credit inquiry I didn't recognize. But I'd brushed it off, thinking maybe it was an error. Now I had proof. And this time, I wasn't a powerless college kid. I was the one who wrote the damn subpoenas, so I started planning. Carefully. Quietly. First, I transferred copies of every document from the file into a private drive. Then, using my credentials, I opened an internal request for a review investigation. Not a full case, not yet, but enough to start collecting evidence without drawing attention. I knew better than to go straight at them. If I exposed the family connection too early, it could jeopardize my job. So I created a separate alias account, E. Matthews, and used it to send a tip to our financial crimes unit. I listed out the fake fund, the forged will, the pawn slips, all of it, but left out the family details. Then I reached out to an old contact from law school, a private investigator named Marcus who owed me a favor. I told him to tail my sister and dig into her financials. Within a week, he sent me photos. Alyssa meeting a man behind a pawn shop in Lebanon. Cash exchange. No baby, no husband, no guilt. Just that same satisfied smirk I remembered from the baby shower. Marcus's report also mentioned something strange. She'd been making frequent visits to the county registrar's office, requesting old death certificates, marriage licenses, property records. It didn't make sense unless she was building something, or erasing something, so I baited her. I sent Alyssa a text from a new number, posing as a local jewelry appraiser who'd found a piece she might recognize, a family heirloom with initials LM. Within 5 minutes, she replied, "Can I come see it in person?" That told me everything. She knew exactly what it was. We arranged to meet the next day in town. I booked the table in a cafe right across from the courthouse, my turf. I wore plain clothes, no badge, no title. When she arrived, her smile flickered just a little when she saw me. "You look different," she said, voice tight. "Yeah," I replied. "Life does that." I pulled a small jewelry box out of my bag, not the real necklace, of course, just a replica. "Recognize it?" Her eyes widened. She covered it quickly with a laugh, but I saw the panic flash first. "Relax," I said. "You'll have plenty of time to explain everything soon." That's when she noticed the man in the corner booth, Marcus, pretending to read a newspaper, and the two plainclothes investigators at the counter. Her face drained of color. I leaned in and said softly, "You forged my name, you forged Mom's will, and you used her death to line your pockets. But the worst part, you thought I'd stay quiet." She whispered, "You wouldn't ruin your own family." I smiled, a kind I didn't know I had in me. "You already did." But what I didn't know yet was that Alyssa hadn't been the mastermind. She was covering for someone else, and that someone had been waiting for me to come home. Alyssa broke faster than I expected. 2 hours after our meeting, she was in an interrogation room downtown. Not handcuffed, not yet, but pale and shaking. I watched from behind the glass as one of our investigators questioned her. She denied everything at first. Then she started crying, saying she only pawned things to help Dad keep the store alive. That part I already knew, but then she said something that made my stomach twist. "It wasn't my idea. He told me to do it. He said Mom wanted it that way." The investigator asked who he was. I already knew the answer, but still hearing it hit different. "My uncle," she whispered. "Uncle Mark." I froze. Uncle Mark, Dad's younger brother. The one who handled all the store's finances after Mom died. The one who'd comforted me at the funeral and told me, "Don't worry, kiddo, your mom made sure you're taken care of." He'd been my favorite growing up. The only adult who seemed like he got me. He'd even helped me with college applications. I remember him handing me an envelope with a little help, $500 in cash, and saying, "Don't tell your dad." I thought he was protecting me. Turns out he was protecting himself. When the investigators checked, Uncle Mark's name was all over the forged documents, digital fingerprints, bank routing numbers, notarized forms. He'd been the one who edited the real will and refiled the fake one. He'd used my dad's failing business to wash stolen charity money through their accounts. He was the real puppet master. Alyssa and Dad were just the greedy, gullible accomplices. I spent the next week living in a fog. Every night I'd go over the evidence again, trying to find some trace of the man I used to trust, the uncle who'd called me kiddo and told me Mom was proud of me. But all I saw now was calculation. When the DA's office moved to issue subpoenas, Mark was nowhere to be found. He'd cleaned out his accounts and disappeared. His last withdrawal was 10 grand in cash from a local branch 3 days before Alyssa's interrogation. That's when the calls started. Blocked numbers, no voice, just breathing. One night I heard someone whisper, "You should have stayed gone." I didn't tell the cops. I didn't tell anyone, because I knew it was him. And because a part of me, the part that remembered him tucking a blanket around my shoulders at age 12, wanted to look him in the eye before I ended it. Then came the package. No return address. Inside, a folded letter and something wrapped in tissue. The letter said, "You always wanted to know why your mom's necklace disappeared. Ask your father about the night she died." I unwrapped the tissue. Inside was the real necklace. The dented clasp, the faint engraving, unmistakable. But taped to the back was a photo I'd never seen before. My mom, pale and thin in a hospital bed, and my uncle standing beside her, holding a clipboard. The date printed at the bottom was 1 week before her death. And in the corner of that photo, you could see it, her shaking hand signing something. A document. The same document that had supposedly been forged later. Only now, I wasn't sure it was forged at all. Because maybe my mother hadn't trusted any of them. Maybe she'd changed her will at the last second and left everything to someone else entirely. I couldn't stop staring at that photo. My mom looked frail, almost translucent, but her eyes, those eyes, still had that quiet defiance I remembered. She was signing something. Uncle Mark stood next to her, smiling. That smile burned into me. The next morning, I drove straight to the county records office. The clerk knew me from work and let me pull old filings under Linda Matthews. I sat there for hours flipping through dust-coated folders until I found it. A handwritten addendum to my mother's will. Dated 1 week before she died. Witness signature, Mark D. Matthews. The contents made my blood run cold. All remaining business assets and accounts are to be transferred solely to Erin L. Matthews, my daughter, upon my passing. Alyssa has her father's protection. Erin will need mine. That line. Erin will need mine. My mom knew. She knew what my father and his brother were. She must have realized they'd drain her insurance or bury me under lies. She'd changed her will to protect me, and Uncle Mark witnessed it. Then he buried it. I needed to confirm the rest. I contacted one of Mom's old nurses, a woman named Sheila, who'd retired years ago. When I told her who I was, she got quiet, then said, "Oh, honey, I remember that week. Your mom was scared. She said someone was trying to make her sign things she didn't understand. She said it was your uncle." According to Sheila, he visited the hospital every day near closing hours. Always alone, always carrying papers. He told staff he was handling end-of-life matters. No one questioned it, he was family. But here's the part that broke me. She said my mother begged them not to let him near her the night before she died. She was crying, saying, he's taking it all from Aaron." The next morning, she was gone. Sudden cardiac arrest, according to the file. No autopsy requested. My father signed off on cremation within 12 hours. And Mark handled the paperwork. It clicked like a lock snapping shut. He hadn't just forged her signature, he'd used it. He'd stood there with a pen in her hand, getting what he needed while she was too weak to stop him. Then he destroyed the document that left everything to me and replaced it with one that funneled the money through my father. He killed her legacy to make sure the store, the insurance, the name, all of it stayed in his control. And he'd kept manipulating them for years, turning my dad and sister into his pawns, feeding their resentment toward me so none of them ever questioned him. When I finally called my father and told him what I'd found, he went silent for almost a full minute. Then in this cracked, trembling voice he said, "Mark promised me she wanted it that way." He started sobbing. Said he didn't know, that he'd trusted his brother, that he thought I was lying when I said the necklace was gone because Mark told him I'd sold it for tuition money. Everything, the will, the pawnings, the fake charities, it had all been orchestrated by one man who knew exactly how to twist everyone's grief into guilt and greed. Uncle Mark hadn't just stolen money. He'd rewritten my mother's death. And that's when I stopped being angry. I got cold. Because if he wanted me gone, he should have made sure I stayed buried with her. After that night, I didn't sleep for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mom's weak hand holding that pen while my uncle stood beside her, smiling. He'd taken everything from her, from me, and still walked free. So I decided to take everything back. I started with the paper trail. I had legal access to half of it already through the DA's office, but I needed the rest, the kind of evidence that would make sure he couldn't wiggle out with a plea or some technicality. Marcus helped me pull records from shell companies Mark had used. He'd been running a fake contracting firm out of another county, funneling money from the store and the bogus charity fund into a private trust in the Cayman Islands. We tracked down the accounts, the signatures, the offshore wire logs, all under the same alias he'd used since my mother's death. L. Matthews Holdings. He'd literally built his fortune using my mother's initials. It took me 3 weeks to assemble the case file. By the end, it was thick enough to crush a man's career and his freedom. I didn't hand it over to my boss, though. Not yet. First, I wanted him to see what I'd done. I found him myself. He was living in a lake house 2 towns over, quiet and isolated, pretending to be retired. When he opened the door and saw me standing there, his face drained like he'd seen a ghost. "Aaron," he said softly. "Kiddo," I held up the locket. "You remember this?" His eyes flicked to it, then back to me. "Where did you?" "I got it from the pawn shop," I cut him off. "The same way I got the receipts, the will, and your offshore account records." He started to stammer, reaching for excuses, how it wasn't what it looked like, how my mom didn't know what she was signing. But I didn't let him finish. "You stood in her hospital room," I said, voice shaking, "and you watched her die while you stole from her." For once, he didn't have words, just silence. Then a faint sneer. "You always did dramatize things." That's when I set the binder down on his porch table. Every receipt, every email, every notarized fake. "You've got 24 hours before this goes to the state attorney's office. You can turn yourself in, or I'll make sure they come for you." He laughed, a slow, cruel sound that made my skin crawl. "You think you can ruin me? You'd burn your own family for revenge." I looked him dead in the eye. "No. I'm doing it for her." Then I left. By the next morning, his car was gone. I thought he'd run until the call came in from the county sheriff. Mark had been found in his lake house, dead from an overdose. They ruled it a suicide. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. It just felt quiet, empty. Alyssa and my dad were charged with fraud but got probation after cooperating. Aunt Carol vanished to Florida. The store shut down. At the sentencing, the judge asked if I had anything to say. I just said, my mother deserved better. Afterward, I stood outside the courthouse, holding the locket in my hand. I opened it for the first time in years. Inside was the same faded photo of my mom smiling in our old kitchen, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a lost kid. I wasn't the scapegoat anymore. I was the last Matthew standing. Before I left town for good, I went to the old store, boarded up and half empty. I nailed the locket to the front door not as a tribute, but as a warning. Some things you don't steal twice.